debating whether Canada's in a bubble are national pastimes.
The housing bubble in Canada.
Canada has some of the most expensive real estate prices in the world.
We have that whole thing of looming bubble in the background here.
A housing bubble burst.
The speculation is wild. Private investors and even the Bank of Canada have warned the housing in this country could be overvalued by as much as 30%. The concern is that speculation of a bubble could turn from mere talk to this.
2008 was a year that many investors around the world will want to forget. With plunging home prices and rising foreclosures, the housing problem snowballed into an economic crisis that we haven't seen since the Great Depression.
Well, it was a big week for those who follow the debate. A Toronto-based company called Home Capital Group released its quarterly earnings report. Home Capital is one of the largest alternative lenders in the country and is considered by many to be the canary in the coal mine of Canada's housing bubble and, by extension, the nation's economy. Following an abrupt halt in trading Wednesday night, Thursday morning, the company announced it has severed ties with dozens of mortgage brokers who falsified documents about borrowers' incomes. Put together, those falsified mortgages add up to nearly $1 billion. Now, the company says it's rooted out bad apples and cleaned up the problem. Others, including our next guest, say the situation at Home Capital is just the beginning. Marc Cohodes is part of the growing short Canada trend, where American hedge funders are betting against the Canadian economy. He has bet against HomeCap and began shorting the company's stock back in fall of 2014. This week's events, he says, prove he was right. What's more, he says they follow a similar pattern to the housing crisis in the United States in 2008. Marc Cohodes is on the line from Cotati, California. Marc, you called this. Were you surprised to find out just how bad things were?
I think that's a perfect way of putting it. I thought things were bad and rotten to the core at HCG or Home Cap Group, but their revelations were far worse than even I thought.
What do we now know?
What we now know is their pre-release, if you will, of their origination miss, which they announced on July 10th. And subsequently to the July 10th pre-release, they had a director resign last Friday night that the company didn't announce till Monday after the close of business. The company announced that since September of 2014, there was an external, as they would say, complaint, whistleblower, what have you, bring up issues on their mortgage origination side, on the prime side of business. They said that's something to the tune of $960 some odd million. They say it's not material, it's not significant, business as usual, sorry, we'll dust ourselves off, and that's that.
But this is $1 billion, or nearly $1 billion, in loans that were not done the way they should have been done.
Exactly. I mean, you know, if you look up the wiki definition of mortgage fraud, this fits the definition of it. And the thing that I can't wrap my brain around, because I've seen this before, is it's kind of like people think this is like a cold. Right? Oh, I caught a cold. We only have $1 billion in mortgage fraud, but we kind of caught it, and it's not really a big deal, and we don't think it's material, and we've gotten rid of some rogue people, and we'll let it go. Right? It just doesn't work that way. You know, fraud, especially on mortgages, especially, let's say in Canada, you know, where you have CMHC involved, insuring, you know, you have taxpayers backing this up. And the moral hazard involved in this is so significant. I'm just absolutely amazed people sort of look the other way. I really am.
Now, you say you've seen this before. Are you talking about the lead up to the 2008 financial crisis?
Yeah, I mean, I used to run a hedge fund here in the States, and I'm somewhat known for doing the research and work on a company of fraud in the United States called Novastar and subprime mortgage. So I kind of really have a penchant and passion for people who try to rip off the consumer and or sell something that's just not true. So this Home Cap, you know, in many ways reminds me of the Novastar. And when someone tries to cover things up, it really, really, really attracts my attention. And I feel strongly about it, and I don't mind speaking out.
It is worth pointing out, though, that, you do stand to gain from home cap going down.
Of course.
You know what I mean? Like there is some transaction
Of course I stand to gain if home cap goes down. Of course I stand to gain. If someone was on the other side and they're bullish, they stand to gain if home cap goes up. I don't mind speaking out on this because I think, you guys, if you will, have a chance to do something to set the tone for things going forward.
I think for Canadians up here, you well know, when we hear the words fraud and mortgage in the same sentence, we get very scared and think about what happened to the American housing crisis. We always talk about Canada dodged the real hammer of the 2008 recession because our banks remain solvent. We didn't have a housing crisis. But take a broader look at this week's news and concerns about the housing market in general here. How concerned should Canadians be in light of what we figured out this week?
I think people should be extraordinarily concerned. Now, I'm involved in one situation, and that's home cap.
That's right.
But I'm aware of the private mortgage market up there, which is beyond crazy. I have no problem with the banks, the big six or the big five or the oligopoly. I mean, they're well managed, they're big. What does concern me and simply is housing at its basic form is shelter. It's a place to live. It shouldn't be used as a tool to trade like stocks or even worse, penny stocks or get rich quick schemes because you need to be levered. You can lose it all. You can lose a generation's worth of wealth, as what happened here. And not all people are capable or affordable or should really own a house. Some people should rent. And home ownership at the end of the day, in some ways, is a huge privilege.
Mm-hmm.
And with leverage and cheap money, the housing market in certain areas of Canada have just gotten crazy.
Beyond people who own stock in this, why should most Canadians care about this story and what we're learning here?
You should care because stuff like this doesn't happen at bottoms. It happens more at tops. It's more of the canary in the coal mine. It's more of a sign of things getting somewhat crazy. I do not want to see innocent people lose it all, and people will lose it all. You can mark my words, when things correct, given the leverage in the system, and the people who are levered are so levered, it's going to be very sad.
I guess I'm trying to think about this from the perspective of, a friend of mine in Vancouver, Toronto, or Calgary who is thinking about getting into the housing market, buying their first house, and they're listening to this interview and thinking, well, wait a second, what should they be thinking about in light of this week's news and the entrance into that market, if, as you say, this is the sign more of a top than a bottom?
Well, if you're looking to buy a house to live in as shelter and you can afford it and you don't have to borrow money from your parents or get a private mortgage to get the down payment to do your mortgage or some cockamamie deal, and you think the price is right and you can afford it, by all means, jump in. If you want to borrow money and speculate and you can't afford it and you're in it for an investment vehicle, I'd be very, very wary.
If I've got this right, you started shorting in November-ish of 2014?
Yeah, October, November.
So whatever. Around $50 a share. It's now down
Something
to...
like that. I think it was like the first quarter they missed. The stock was 55 and it traded at 51. So I said, this is for me. And I've done more along the way because I think it's just getting worse and worse and worse. It's not getting better.
So I'm assuming this isn't it. You don't see a bottom here. You're not getting out yet.
Oh, God, no. God, no. I mean, if it'll take me years, it'll take me years. I'm not going anywhere. I'm a healthy man. And we're going to talk about this for kind of months to come. I hope it's not years. I hope everyone figures it out. I mean, I hope, there's really good explanations why the director left on a Friday night, why the chief financial officer resigned at the end of the year, why the head of risk left in January, why another person from the risk department left in the first quarter. why Soloway said April was great when the quarter was a disaster. I mean, maybe there are really good explanations for this, but I don't believe in luck and I don't believe in coincidence. This dialogue's not going to die anytime soon.
No, I think this is a conversation we're going to have for some time to come. And as you well know, the debate over housing and whether we're in a bubble or not is a national obsession. So thank you so much for coming on the show and speaking with us about this. It's a big, important issue, and I'm glad we got at it.
Well, thanks for having me, and we'll see where it goes.
Good stuff. Thanks, Mark.
Yeah.
That was Marc Cohodes in Cotati, California.